All right. Well, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ali Radha Walji. I will be your presenter today, inshallah. Thank you for joining this presentation. I know it's a Sunday. I know it's Ramadan. And I wish you all, first and foremost, a happy Ramadan Mubarak. I pray that this month bring a lot of blessings for the Ummah. And may all our fasts, our prayers, be accepted, and all our sins, inshallah, be forgiven. I know this year is a unique Ramadan. A lot of people are, used to the familiarity of having to go to the masajid and meeting and greeting their fellow brothers and sisters. But inshallah, there's khair in this, test that we have been given, and I can only see goodness in it if you think about the blessings that we're able to benefit from, inshallah. So to get started, I'm going to be talking about a few different topics, but this is just for anyone to reference. A little bit about myself. I'm ShariaPortfolio, about the company as well as my background. So I'll start out with ShariaPortfolio. We started out in 2003. Alhamdulillah, we have been in business since then. We are serving clients all over the United States, in over 25 states. And Alhamdulillah, as of earlier this year, we are able to service clients in Canada as well. So, the business has been growing. And, I'll cover a little bit more about the business and the different services that we have. But just to give you some background about my journey, I started out actually, working in the mortgage space. That was my initial, stronghold in the business side of things. I was pre-med once upon a time, and then decided to kind of pursue something in business. So I was working at, in a conventional mortgage firm, and really was not sure, or was clueless, I should say, about what is going on in my 401k plan. And at the time I was living in Minnesota. So Naushad Virji, the CEO of ShariaPortfolio, was visiting at the time. And I had him, question or asked him, what's going on in my 401? What do you notice? And he was able to spot a lot of non-halal elements. So, as someone who was not, familiar or paying as much attention to these things, we sometimes can live our lives, blinded by what is going on in our 401k plans, our retirement accounts. And so that was a wake-up call for me. And, I kept in touch with Naushad, and at the time, things, I was still, looking to transition. And when I moved to DC area, I started out as, in a marketing position, and alhamdulillah, got my license to be an advisor. And today I'm helping to manage the US operations. You can see on the slide a couple of media appearances I've been on with Forbes, US News and World Report. I also write regularly for the Islamic Finance News. So if you follow the blog section or of our website, or in the news section, you'll be able to see, some of the different articles that our team publishes. And, alhamdulillah, I've been blessed to be able to visit different communities around the country and present on the subject of halal investing. So what we're going to cover today is, the stock market. There's different definitions that we'll try and demystify for anyone who's not completely familiar, but then we'll dig a little bit deeper and talk about value investing. There's different schools of thought, but in our presentation, we'll be focusing mainly on value investing. And then we'll look at what is Sharia compliance. When we say something is halal, what does that mean exactly? And then getting started, if you're looking to invest, what are the different options you have? And then we'll allow Q&A at the end. So as you're submitting your Q&A at the, through the option in the Zoom invite, we'll address them with my colleague, Shafa Kazi. She's a licensed advisor, and she'll be helping to address some of your questions. But of course, if anything requires me to explain at the end, is when we'll tackle them one by one. So what is, what was the concept? Why did ShariaPortfolio get started? And basically our mission has been to be able to offer professionally managed investment solutions for Muslims to help them achieve their financial goals while conforming basically to their personal values. So there was, a need in the Muslim space, and that's where Naushad, Virji, our CEO, decided that, we had to cater to this need. And alhamdulillah, it's been growing since then. We've been dedicated to offering Sharia compliant portfolio management. We utilize currently a custodian by the name of TD Ameritrade, which recently also is going to be acquired by Schwab, or there was a merger going on. So, it's a very well reputable name where, we use them for householding all the clients' assets. In terms of our service offerings, the few things that we've highlighted here, there is a premier solution for those who are looking for comprehensive wealth management. If you want one-on-one service with a financial advisor who can work with you and kind of create a game plan and also allow you to review your portfolio, then that falls generally under our access program. Typically, the minimum on that is about 100,000. We also have an express solution, which is generally an economical starting point for those who want to dip their foot into the halal space, but want to stay more, in a limited capacity, may not necessarily be looking for, comprehensive work one-on-one with the advisor. The starting point is about $1,000 on that. We do offer various account types. We've just listed a few of them here. Company 401k plans, individual 401k plans. We do have defined benefit pension plans, among other plans, and college savings options as well. And of course, being that we're within a financial institution that is licensed, we are FDIC insured, as well as SIPC insured for those amounts listed on the screen. So to get started, I'll talk about the stock market. What are some definitions? As I mentioned, there's a few things that I'd like to cover. On the most basic level, we like to cover stocks. When you say you're an owner in any given company, you're basically part of that business. So whether you own 5 shares in one of the companies like Apple, or whether you own 100 shares in a company like Google, you might still be 0.0000001% owner, but still you're part owner of that business. You have voting rights as well. And so that's essentially what it means when you are owning a stock, is you're owning part of that business. If the business does well, then you earn profits from that. And if the business does not do well, then there is a potential for loss as well. Sukuk, on the other hand, are fixed income products that are loans, given in a lease type arrangement whereby there is no dealing in debt. Bonds, as you can see, do have fixed income components. So you're ending up earning interest by loaning a company or a government a certain amount of money to fulfill their operational requirements. Sukuk, on the other hand, you're getting dividend income because the underlying asset, the underlying contract is asset backed. A portfolio basically is the totality of what you own. So if you have 5 shares in Microsoft, 10 shares in a healthcare company like Johnson & Johnson, 15 shares in a commodity, then the totality of all the things that you own is basically your portfolio. So just kind of like to start out with a few basic definitions for anyone who may not have been familiar with that. Of course, the stock market, if you were to examine it historically speaking, and if somebody were to show you a chart like this, then, I can see how it can create anxiety, fear, because, we all remember clearly what happened in the financial crisis of 2008. The markets did plummet that year. However, if you were to keep things in a broader perspective, then as you can see on this particular slide, if you keep a longer term view, then that circle essentially is the period that you saw in the previous slide, the financial crisis. And what followed in the years that followed the crisis were years that were one of the strongest bull markets that we experienced. So in a longer term view, historically speaking, the stock market can help you achieve a return of about 8 to 10%. And so that's a pretty remarkable feature of the stock market, and this has gone through several World War I, World War II. We've seen the tech bubble, and all these other crisis periods. And as you can see, the trajectory in the long term is upwards. What are some reasons to invest? Brother Salahuddin was kind enough to share a picture of his home. But on a more serious note, right, we like to make sure that everyone is prepared for retirement. because by failing to plan, and by relying just on Social Security, a lot of people will come to the realization that Social Security is not sufficient enough to sustain us in our retirement age. And even if you are receiving this, a lot of people will say that it's only, for example, making up about 30% of their income. So retirement planning is one of the most important ones. Another area we like to emphasize is education savings, because if you think about it, one of the most best gifts, I should say, that you can give your kids is a high quality education. And in today's day and age, a 4-year college can cost you about $100,000, but that's for folks that are going to college at this age. However, for those who have young children, by the time they're ready for college, you might be looking at a sticker price of about $175,000 just for a state level education, and that's not even counting graduate school or private school. That could be a lot more. And then obviously, this month of Ramadan, a lot of people may want to invest their charitable accounts like donor advised funds, and we can use those to help sustain various nonprofit organizations. That's another noble cause that a lot of people can take advantage of. And obviously tax savings being one of the big ones as well, because if you're not taking advantage of the tax deferment benefits that some of your retirement accounts are providing, then you'll find that you're losing about 2%, if not more, towards taxes each year. And this chart kind of solidifies that point. By investing in a tax deferred vehicle like a 401k, a 403b, a SEP IRA, simple IRA, traditional IRA, these type of accounts will historically help you achieve about 9.7% returns, in the stock market over a long period, obviously based on the chart I showed earlier. And by long period, I mean generally 3 years or more is a good measure for how the stock market operates. If, however, you're not taking advantage of the tax deferment benefit, then as you can see, you're losing about 2 to 3%, and your returns drop to about 6.89%. Obviously, inflation is something that we have to watch out for. So for those who are thinking that by keeping their money in their bank account or under their pillow, you should be careful about that. If you're keeping too much cash, you might be losing on inflation. Obviously, it's a good idea to have emergency savings, should you lose a job or you need, to fix some plumbing or something or the other comes up, but you should be mindful of not holding too much cash because that could lose value through inflation. Now, this is a slide I get excited about because if you're young, the idea is that you may look along what's on the left-hand side where, your primary job makes up the bulk of your income. Your paycheck is paying most of your bills. And in the beginning, you may stow away a little bit in a stock portfolio, right, like your retirement plan. And other category could be something like real estate. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the other options could entail. But yeah, for example, you put a little bit about in a real estate account so that over time, what you want to look like is something on the right-hand side, whereby, as you approach retirement age, your primary job is now making up maybe 20% of your income. And you have grown a substantial amount in your stock portfolio or real estate portfolio, and you're able to live off of those dividends such that even that primary job that's there is as a way to help you keep keep active, and you're working because you want to, not necessarily because you have to. And another thing you can take away from this chart is that it's so important to have multiple revenue streams. You don't want to rely on just one income source, because if something or the other were to happen and that gets disrupted, then you'd undoubtedly be in a hardship situation. And planning slowly over time and putting a little bit of your income away can be a great way, especially if you have a 401k plan and your company is matching. Those are great ways to take advantage of those free dollars. So as I mentioned, other investments could be like real estate, where you can earn rental income, appreciation in the properties. You can start a business. Some people may have a passion and they could start a business on one of the social media channels, or on Amazon or any of these platforms that allow you to start your own business. That's a great way to take a hobby, for example, and use that to earn revenue. One of our clients, for example, loved to do photography. And, through that, he was able to charge clients for weddings or other private occasions and, start making a little bit of money on the side. So it's always good to kind of diversify and consider other investments as well. When it comes to investing, this is the second segment that I will be focusing a little bit more of my focus on attention, because this is what I think is the crux of what, people are often misguided about or may not have enough information about. And we feel that our role is to educate the community and, inform them of what investing is all about. Now, as I said earlier, there's different schools of thought. People sometimes might believe in technical analysis, day trading, or some people believe in letting the computers decide how to invest. We at Sharia Portfolio believe in something called value investing. And to get us started, I'll put together in front of you a definition that has been provided to us by an individual whose name is Benjamin Graham. I actually have his book right here. And for anyone who's interested in learning more, you can always pick up this book called The Intelligent Investor, where he covers, the definition of an investment is an operation which, upon thorough analysis, promises safety of principal and satisfactory return. If you're not meeting this requirement, you're basically considered to be speculating, and that's what we want to avoid. So what he's essentially pinpointing in this definition is that you have to go through an analysis. You cannot just invest because some friend told you that this is a good company. You have to do some due diligence. You have to understand, is there a margin of safety in the stock, and what is the expected return you're aiming for? And if you're meeting those requirements, then that's considered investing. And who is Benjamin Graham? Benjamin Graham wrote this book, Security Analysis, in 1934. And he's actually considered the father of value investing. Many of you may have heard of Warren Buffett. He's arguably one of the most successful investors of our time. And he attributes a lot of his success to the lessons that he learned from Benjamin Graham. So I think when Benjamin Graham teaches us something, we should be paying attention. What is value investing exactly? Value investing essentially boils down to doing a fundamental analysis, whereby you're trying to understand what is the true value of a company. If we were to examine any stock price of any traded stock on the New York Stock Exchange, for example, you might see that the stock is today trading at $100 a share, and tomorrow might be $120 a share, and next month it might come down to $50 a share. What does that mean exactly? Does that mean the company price or the value is changing dramatically from one month to another? Or is it some other force at play that's causing the price to fluctuate? In our view, what we feel is that there is a difference between the value of a company versus the perception. The intrinsic value is something that is derived by understanding how long the company has been around, what their revenues look like, who is their competition, how does the management team run that company, and a bunch of these types of questions, when you try and analyze, will help you determine the intrinsic value of the company. Versus what is traded on the stock market exchange, we feel is just the perception of value. And how do we, and that's essentially driven by volume. So if a lot of people are deciding to buy a bunch of shares in any given stock, well, stock price goes up. If people are, sad or they hear some negative news and they decide to sell, well, that's going to cause the stock price to come down. So essentially, in the definition or in the understanding of value investing, you'll find that there is not always going to be a true value directly linked with the stock price that you're seeing. And I'll give you a simple example. Today, for example, I'm using my MacBook to do this webinar. A lot of you, I imagine, have iPhones and other Apple products. But just to give you a quick idea, in 2007, when Apple launched their first iPhone, it was obviously a revolutionary product. All of us were excited at that time. I can imagine, the enthusiasm was there, but the stock price was trading at $250 a share. A lot of clients were asking us at that time, we want to be a part of this thing. And we cautioned against that because we felt that was not the appropriate price point to start buying or taking a position in that company. Fast forward 18 months, and that stock price is now trading at $80 a share. I mean, that's a third of the price. So we called a lot of those same clients that were initially letting us know that they were interested in Apple, and we said, it's Thanksgiving sale at Apple, and this is the time to buy as many shares as you want. And lo and behold, none of them wanted anything to do with Apple at that time. And guess what happened to Apple another 18 months down the line? It was now $350 And you've all seen how it, flew in years that followed. So we feel that, there's some people who have this efficient market hypothesis where the stock price is pricing all the relevant data about any given company, and whatever price you're seeing when you clock into any of your brokerage platforms and check the ticker symbol of any of the stocks that you're interested in, that's what the price is. Well, if that's the case, how do you explain a simple example like the Apple one that I just highlighted, whereby there was such a dramatic change between, 1 year versus the next, when essentially, if you believe that the stock price should have been, increasing in value, which should have been the case, right? Because Apple started out with iPhone 1, went on to iPhone 2s, went on to iPads and iTunes and all this other stuff that came out. Anyone examining that company would have thought, well, the stock price should be going up because they're doing more and more amazing things. But that's not necessarily what happened. The stock price came down. And so this is a way for us to explain to folks that, look, the price that you're seeing on the stock market does not necessarily mean that that's the value. You still have to do your research, and that it's just the perception that you're seeing. And what does Warren Buffett teach us? He teaches us, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. Now, I'm not trying to promote greed, but what we're trying to say is that be careful when you see people running in one direction, that maybe that should cause us to think for a second as to whether or not that's the right direction to head, and essentially kind of prepare to think for yourself and make the best decision. Obviously, being mindful of your goals as well. So looking at Sharia compliance, this is a topic that we'll cover briefly. And of course, I'm not a Sharia scholar, but I'll still cover what are the guidelines that are being followed and what is halal investing in general. Halal investing basically means that you're investing in securities or investments that conform to Islamic principles when we are following the guidelines that have been laid forth for us by a trustworthy Sharia advisory board. Then we are considered to be investing in a Sharia compliant manner. What are the scholars that we are following? We're following this governing body called AOFI, which is the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. It's basically the gold standard for halal investing. They provide not just investment guidelines, but also banking, mortgages, and other criteria are laid forth by this non-profit governing body. It's based in Bahrain, but it's made up of renowned scholars from around the world. And some of those names that you can see here, including Sheikh Muhammad Taqi Usmani, are involved in creating the criteria for us. And what have they told us exactly that we should avoid? Well, it's no doubt these sectors like gambling, alcohol, adult entertainment are areas that we should be avoiding. But beyond that, we are eligible to invest in stocks, sukuks, which are, I pointed out what those are earlier. Mutual funds and Islamic ETFs are eligible. Preferred shares are not. These are basically a hybrid of fixed income. There's a fixed interest component to them like bonds, so they're not considered to be acceptable. However, stocks, sukuks, mutual funds, and ETFs are okay, as long as these other financial ratios are met. So one of the main things that are looked at is how much debt does a company have? If the debt in relation to the market capitalization exceeds 30%, then it's not considered to be permissible to invest in that company. And if you think about it, when the financial crisis took place, the main reason that contributed to the financial crisis coming down was due to the fact that there was too much debt in the system. So by avoiding debt, that essentially helps you kind of protect your portfolio to a certain degree from the shocks that you could experience from what's going on in the market, especially during the downturns. We're also told that we cannot hold too much cash over their net worth. That's another criteria that the scholars have laid down. And the third one here is looking at the cumulative revenue from non-operating interest income or any non-permissible source of revenue essentially cannot exceed 5%. And so these are the scholars that have given us this criteria, and we just follow those before we screen it, invest in any company. We run them through these ratios and decide whether or not something is permissible. Now, on the third one, sometimes people do have a question, so I can address that here, hopefully to shed some light. There was a scholar that I was following, an Islamic scholar in financial matters, that mentioned this wonderful hadith that the Prophet ﷺ was asked about a tub of ghee, and you all know ghee is what a lot of the Desi folks use in making parathas and some of these amazing foods that make us hungry. I don't want to make you all feel sad about Ramadan, but this ghee where a mouse fell in, and it's at the top of that ghee at the middle of the night, it solidifies, and so the top layer was obviously problematic. But the Prophet was asked, "Can we use this ghee?" So instead of saying discard the whole ghee, he said you can clear the top part where the mouse fell in and still use the bottom, that is still clear. So the idea is that that you want to still purify the non-halal that comes in, but the greater good is what is being examined. What are the options you have to getting started? Number one, you can open your own brokerage account. Robinhood or any of these platforms that a lot of people are familiar with, Fidelity, Schwab, TD Ameritrade. You can use any of these platforms and open and buy and sell stocks on your own. If you want to know what is Sharia compliant, you can open the prospectus of any of the mutual funds or ETFs, and they will tell you what is in there, and you can pick and choose from there. If you do decide to go with that option, then you'll have to know when to buy, how much to buy, when to sell, and that's one option. You also have the option of working with our express service, which is, as I mentioned, an economical way to get your foot in the door. $1,000 gets you started, and you can work with a licensed professional. The fee is also smaller on the express side. On the other hand, for those who want a more comprehensive solution, there is the access service where you get customized portfolios and also the ability to interact one-on-one with an advisor for financial advice and the portfolio management piece. And you also get a web portal that allows you to track your net worth, your performance, and other features as well. And our client service team is at your service when you need any help with your account information or paperwork. Our client service team is able to help you at each step of the way. So that's the express service. Now, when you're looking to consider working with an advisor, right, you will have to think about some qualities. But before we go into choosing an advisor, some people might even have the option, for example, to buy funds themselves. You've all heard of some of the halal mutual funds in the Islamic space. There is also ETFs that are now available, alhamdulillah, that is revolutionizing or creating more opportunities, I should say, for the Muslim investors and other investors at large who want to avoid leveraged companies and still invest in a socially responsible manner. There is ETFs available. And if you're following our blogs, you'll be able to see that we've been talking about some of them. And so this is another way, as a passive way to invest. But of course, there is the third way of investing, which is to consider working with an advisor. And what is the job of an advisor? Is to help you achieve your financial goals. And if you are looking to consider working with an advisor, there are certain things you'll be looking at. Number one, which we feel is the most important, is the investment philosophy. In today's example or in today's presentation, I talked about the investment philosophy being one of the top things that you should keep in mind. Because if you feel that buy low, sell high, or doing the fundamental analysis is important, then make sure that the advisor you decide to work with understands that and believes in the similar approach. The other thing is to consider working with a fiduciary or a fee-only advisor. If you've ever heard of talk show host representatives like Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman, they will always mention, work with a fee-only advisor. And why is that being mentioned? And the primary reason is that a fee-only advisor is going to be looking out for your best interests. A lot of times our industry may have advisors who are compensated by commissions as well. And as such, they may not necessarily recommend what is best for the client. So always be mindful of that. And then, of course, Sharia compliance. Maintaining Sharia compliance is not, is not the easiest task, because companies, even in the healthcare or technology space, could fail one of these criteria that I highlighted in the previous slides. And your average advisor or someone who is lay at investing may not notice those things that might be falling out of bounds. And alhamdulillah, those are the things that we're able to monitor very closely. And if something is no longer Sharia compliant, we remove that from our portfolios. With that said, we do have our website listed there with a ton of information that would help you in your financial journey. Our number is listed, 888 Halal Stocks is a very easy number to remember, or you're welcome to email us at info at ShariaPortfolio.com, and we will be more than happy to address any questions that that you guys would have for us. At this point, I will turn to some of the questions that you guys have highlighted, being mindful of the time as well. I think we have a little bit of time, with some of the questions that are being asked. So from the ones I've seen that are still open, are we hiring? You can always send an inquiry to info@ShariaPortfolio.com and we can take a look at that. There is a question about how may one invest in gold other than buying the physical product? That's a good question. Currently, AOFI scholars have allowed us to invest in gold through an ETF, GLD. You can check this out. It's a gold shares ETF, and this is permissible for us to invest in. What are your fees for the different services? Generally speaking, our access service, as you can see, because of the involvement, the fee ranges on that service between 0.5% to 1.5% annually. On the other hand, our express service will range from 0.4% to 0.75% annually. And that's just to give you an idea. And again, there's variations in those different service offerings, but hopefully that addresses the question. In terms of how is insurance part of our planning? Well, insurance can be something we can take a look at, but it's not a subject that I can address quickly. We can help you with some of those. I actually did, a few days ago, I just wrote about alternative options to takaful, because there is a limited choice of Islamic insurance products in the United States. So if you follow the blog or my LinkedIn page, you will see that we have, in the news section, we released something about insurance. So hopefully that can help you. Is this fund available to purchase on TD Ameritrade, and what is the symbol? So for the ETFs, that I was highlighting earlier, if that's what is being asked, you can check out SPUS, which is an equity ETF that is pegged to the S&P 500 Halal stocks. It's a newly launched product on the New York Stock Exchange. And so far, if you compare that to the S&P 500, just do SPUS in comparison with SPY, and you'll be able to see how well this ETF is performing, which, as I alluded to earlier, in the downside when markets are not going so well, alhamdulillah, the Islamic investments have been holding up, so you can take a look at that. However, on the equity side, you'll get SPUS. We also have a Sukuk ETF for those who are looking to get, income generation and also stability within their portfolios. There is also a great option such as the SPSK, and you can take a look at that as well. Low fee funds such as Vanguard is what financial advisors recommend. What is the fee charged by the ETFs? While Vanguard is definitely a low fee provider, the challenge a lot of times is that they do not necessarily have products that are Sharia compliant. To create Sharia compliant products, it's definitely a more intense operation. But as volumes increase, inshallah, the fees can come down. Of course, when comparing the halal mutual funds to the halal ETFs, you will be able to find that the ETFs are generally a lot lower compared to the funds. So for example, your average halal mutual fund is going to be around 1%, on the equity funds. On the ETF, SPUS charges 0.49. So that's a great way for those who are looking for passive exposure, to get a broad basket within the S&P 500 of companies that are conforming to the halal criteria. The fees are lower. Of course, Vanguard is hard to beat when they have billions and billions in their AUM. But inshallah, that's the direction that we hope to aspire to get towards in the Islamic space as well. In terms of how are we different from Amana funds, I see a question about Amana funds or Azad funds or Azad. Those are great questions. I feel a lot of times these are great products. The Amana funds has a mutual funds that they have released and have been in the business for a while. So, for people who are looking to invest, by buying mutual funds, those are available. They might differ in the halal criteria. Of course, as I mentioned, we're following the strictest guidelines based on the AOFI scholars. Not everyone in the Islamic space may follow that, but, you can look those up as well. Azad has mutual funds as well that they are offering, and you can definitely consider some of those as well. We feel that there's also the comprehensive wealth management that they may be offering, or a wealth management arm, and we have that. But it's always good to understand in terms of what is the investment philosophy, what are the fees. These are the questions I would hope that the same questions you would ask us, that you would, in your own research, you would ask any other provider as well. If you have an existing 401k, for example, some questions of this nature may come up. I would say always good idea to check whether or not your 401k provider, whether it's Voya, Schwab, TD Ameritrade, Vanguard, any of these may have something called a brokerage option, which is also sometimes referred to as a self-directed option. And what that means is that you're not necessarily restricted to the pre-selected choice of mutual funds that the company has provided for you, and you can also gain access to other broader halal choices if you do have a brokerage option. And in some cases, we are also able to help manage that. If you wish to work with an advisor, there is a limited trading authorization form that can enable us to buy and sell on your behalf. Again, one of our advisors is more than happy to talk to you about that. If you do have an old 401k, you also have the flexibility to roll over to an IRA, which is one of the considerations that you should have, because keeping your money in an old 401k can subject it to a lot of fees, and you're still limited to the investment options, versus if you roll over to an IRA, a lot more investments open up for you, and you could potentially reduce some of your fees as well. So as I said, one of the questions was about Lincoln, Voya. So I hope by explaining the self-directed brokerage option, that can help you explain how existing 401k plans can allow you to get the expertise or the help of a third-party financial advisory firm like ours to help manage the account on your behalf. I think hopefully I'm addressing most of these questions. Let me take a look here. I know Shafak has been answering some of them in the side Q&A section bar here. I hope I've addressed most of them, but if you have any more, please feel free to keep them coming here. And one thing I will recommend, if anyone wants to list out potential topics, please put them in your suggestion box, because we feel, inshallah, this pandemic that we're all going through, I pray that everyone attending here, you and your family, remain safe. But of course, given the circumstances, we don't want it to limit our ability to impart the knowledge and our information to you, should you be able to help yourself in your financial journey. I know a lot of people have been concerned what may be happening with the economy. Their 401ks might be in a disarray here and there. I ask people often not to panic, focus on your long-term goals. But if you wish for us to help you, we're always welcome to review your portfolio, give you our feedback, and also, inshallah, help you manage that for you. In terms of how to reach us, you have the screen in front of you has our contact. You can call us or email us, and our advisor team one of us can reach out to you. But if you have topics that you feel we can help address, please go ahead and write them out in the Q&A section. We would be more than happy to address, or maybe consider those in potential future webinars as well. There is a question about transfer money for 529 plan. 529 plans, unfortunately, are not considered to be Sharia compliant. I do highly recommend visiting our blog section. There is an article that we have in there that talks about the pros and cons of the various education savings options that are available. And in there, I talk about UTMAs, which is Uniform Transfer to Minors Act account. It's basically a trust account for the benefit of your child. And it's another option that a lot of our clients have been able to benefit from. It's one thing that you can explore. There is also Coverdell ESAs in the halal space that people can consider. And so I have, I'm mentioning these so you can take a look at the blog section, and or if you want us to follow up with you, we can send out, in the email with some information about the various education saving options. How can I ESG equities are okay. So ESG equities, that's a good question. While halal is a subset of ESG, they're not necessarily the same. So if I say I'm conforming to socially responsible standards or making sure I'm looking at ethical criteria when investing, then of course those are good points to keep in mind. However, they don't necessarily look at financial ratios, like avoiding interest, for example, may not be something that ESG securities look at. So they don't necessarily mean that the Sharia compliance scholars are going to be okay with them. But of course, ESG hopefully is better than any other conventional product that may not be filtering and avoiding some of these non-ethical areas for us. In terms of our fee schedule, like I said, we're more than happy to share our disclosure brochures. You can take a look at that. And that can give you idea on that. Our investments are generally on the value of the portfolio that we're managing. We're not allowed in general by the SEC umbrella to charge by performance. So not just on the profits, for example, we have to build on the whole portfolio, but we do have provision for those who are accredited investors and wish to follow a performance-based fee structure. That option is available. But generally speaking, our fees are on the principal and the portfolio value that we're managing. It is an annual fee that is billed quarterly for the most part, whenever we do our billing in January, April, July, and October. And they're deducted generally directly from your TD Ameritrade account if we're doing your investment management generally on the TD platform. So, I know the questions are coming, and I want to be mindful of the fact that we are getting closer to the end of our program, but I want to make sure that we do not miss some of these questions. And if we have not necessarily addressed them, we're happy to go over them one-on-one with you. In terms of zakat, there's differing opinions on zakat as to whether or not it's due now or it's due at the time that you're eligible to withdraw from your retirement assets. So, differing scholars might have differing opinions on this matter. We don't generally give you our view. We'll just tell you what the scholars are saying, and we will be able to help you if you need the help with calculating zakat on your retirement assets. It's a good question, and especially during Ramadan time, we are able to help you, kind of navigate that side of the zakat questions, because people may not be familiar with the specific criteria that has been laid out for financial assets that are in the modern world. And so there is criteria that the scholars have given us, and we are more than happy to help you navigate that. I know zakat, is a topic that keeps coming up. It's a heavy one, so I'm not able to answer it to the most in-depth level. But we can definitely go ahead and kind of give you some general tips here and go over maybe in the future another webinar on that subject. Yes, Fidelity used to allow third-party advisors for us to manage. However, Fidelity has since limited that or has changed their policies. So we're still able to help guide you as to some of the halal choices you can consider. But of course, if you leave your job, you can always roll over to an IRA, at which point, if you want to work with us directly, we can help you on TD Ameritrade, the platform that we use. So this seems to be trickling in a decent amount of questions. Like I said, I don't want to ignore all of your questions. I don't want to ignore your, your questions, obviously, but I want to make sure that we address them in a timely manner. And we will be definitely getting back to each of you if we have not yet addressed the question here. I'm glad that you were able to attend. I do wish that you and your family, again, get the barakah of Ramadan. Keep us and our families and the Sharia Portfolio family in your du'as. And we pray that you all are safe and remain secure during this time. And of course, if there is any other questions, you have the contact information in front of you. I highly recommend that you subscribe to our newsletter. For those who have not, on the homepage, we generally share, articles that our team publishes. So you're more than happy to follow along and gain some insights about that. But Salahuddin, do you want to jump in? Is there anything that we need to address here last minute or anything else I may have missed?
Not at all. Assalamu alaikum, attendees. Not at all. I think you did a fantastic job in highlighting our product and services, and of course the value that we bring to Muslims. And as the topic suggests, as Muslims, we should consider ensuring that all aspects of our lives are halal, including our finance and investing and so on. And Ramadan is a great time to do that, to get that started. And I know you and your team in the United States, we're situated in various states and can definitely help Muslims across the United States in transitioning or starting investing in the halal way. And alhamdulillah, I think the halal products, as most of our viewers would know, have come a long way. Pricing is quite the same as what you'll get out there from professionally managed wealth managers, as well as service. I mean, our service is on par and just even superior to many wealth managers out there. So with that, I want to thank you you did a fantastic job, and of course all of our viewers out there. And the rest of our team, Shafaq, who's been answering the questions. I'm quite sure she does this every day. So answering your questions online is definitely, an added feature for her.
Well, thanks again. Like I said, our advisors are dispersed in various locations around the country. I know right now we're more dealing with online type meetings. We can always arrange a Zoom one-on-one with our client, with our prospects who want to have a video conference meeting after this. We can schedule those. On the website, there is a contact and schedule. So if you want to schedule something directly with any of our advisors, you have the option of scheduling an appointment directly on our website. You can also fill out an information request form. We have a free stock screening tool, by the way, for those who want to find out about, few of the stocks that you might be wondering, are they compliant, are they not? We have a stock screening tool that you can complete, which our portfolio management team can give you insight as to whether or not a company is passing Sharia compliance or not. And in addition, we have, a dedicated client service team, as I mentioned earlier. As we, if anyone wishes to get onboarded, we have the ability to get our client service team to help, get you onboarded from various, different platforms your accounts might be at. We can consolidate them in one place for easier viewing and tracking. And, depending on the goals that you have set for yourself with your advisor, we generally capture some information on a questionnaire. Our questionnaire is also available online securely. A lot of people find that it's convenient to complete that. It gives us a baseline understanding of your goals, your financial picture, and then we are able to utilize that to provide our financial recommendations for you. So feel free to complete that. Having said that, thank you again very much for your attendance. We appreciate you joining in today. We pray for your well-being and safety, and inshallah look forward to seeing you and hopefully bring your friends to our next events. Otherwise, stay safe, and wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.